7 athletes, 7 pieces of equipment, 7 moments where one bolt, one mat, one inspection, or one warning could have changed everything, and didn't. Every name in this video is real. Every venue is real. Every coroner's report, every lawsuit, every banned skill, all of it is on the public record. So which of these 7 deaths is the one that finally forced the IOC to admit they had been warned for years? Elena Mukhina was 20 years old. She was the 1978 World All-Around Champion. She had beaten Nodar Kumaritashvili in Strasbourg. By the summer of 1980, she was supposed to be the face of the Moscow Olympics. 2 weeks before the opening ceremony, she was on the floor of the Minsk Palace of Sport, crying. Her coach was not in the room. The skill she had to land was called the Thomas Salto. It was a tumbling pass that ended with 1.5 flips and 1.5 twists, finishing in a forward roll. Get the rotation wrong by even a small amount, and your head hits the floor before your feet do. She had told her coach, more than once, that the move would break her neck. He told her people like her don't break their necks. The year before, she had broken her leg. Doctors removed her cast before the bone had finished healing because the Soviet team needed her ready. She was tired, she was hurt, she was scared. On July 3rd, 1980, she ran the tumbling pass. She under-rotated, she landed on her chin, her spine snapped. She was paralyzed from the neck down at the moment of impact. Her first thought, by her own words years later in a documentary, was a strange kind of relief. "Thank God," she said, "I won't be going to the Olympics." The Soviet press lied for over a year. They said the fall happened on the uneven bars. They said she had been training a skill of her own design, against orders. They said she would walk again. None of it was true. Mukhina lived 26 more years in a wheelchair, almost completely silent, almost never giving interviews. She died in Moscow on December 22nd, 2006, from problems caused by her paralysis. The Thomas Salto was banned from the women's code of points after her injury. It is still banned today. 45 years later, every gymnast in the world is safer because Elena Mukhina warned her coach the move would kill her, and he did not listen. Before we get to the death that happened on live television hours before the opening ceremony, do me one favor and hit subscribe, because what was uncovered after he died will change how you watch every Olympics for the rest of your life. Julissa Gomez was 15 years old. Her parents had been migrant farm workers in Texas before saving every dollar they had to send her to train with Bela Karolyi in Houston. By the spring of 1988, she had moved to Missouri to a gym called Great American Gymnastics Express, coached by Al Fong. The Olympics were 3 months away. The skill that was going to take her there was the Yurchenko vault. It begins with a round-off onto the springboard, then a back handspring onto the vaulting horse, then a flip off the horse. The dangerous moment is the springboard. Your hands are already committed before your feet leave the board. If your foot slips, your body becomes a missile aimed at the horse. Julissa could not land it consistently. Her old coach, Bela, saw it. Her teammates saw it. Her current coach, Al Fong, saw it. There was a piece of equipment that could have saved her, a foam wedge called a safety collar that wrapped around the springboard. If a foot slipped, the collar would catch it before it became a head-first crash. The collar existed. The FIG had banned it from competition. On May 5th, 1988, in Tokyo, during warm-ups for the World Sports Fair vault final, Julissa raced down the runway. Her foot slipped off the springboard. She slammed headfirst into the vaulting horse at full speed. She was paralyzed from the neck down. While she was in a Japanese hospital, her ventilator became disconnected. The oxygen loss caused severe brain damage and put her in a coma. Her family brought her home to Houston. They cared for her for 3 years. She died on August 8th, 1991, from an infection. She was 18 years old. The FIG removed the deduction for using the safety collar within months of her accident. By 2001, the old vaulting horse was gone forever, replaced by the wider, safer vaulting table. By 2006, the safety collar was mandatory. A Yurchenko vault performed without one now scores 0. The piece of foam that would have caught her foot cost less than $1. The rule that banned it cost her life. Sang Lan was 17 years old. By the summer of 1998, she had already won the vault title at the 1997 Chinese National Championships. She had finished second on vault at the 1995 Chinese Nationals when she was 14. She had competed at the American Cup twice. Her event was the front handspring with a half twist. A vault she had landed hundreds of times in front of judges, coaches, and her own teammates. The 1998 Goodwill Games in New York were supposed to be the meet that put her on the path to the 2000 Sydney Olympics. She was one of the best vaulters in the world. The Goodwill Games were a big international competition created by media mogul Ted Turner. The 1998 edition was held at the Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, and they were broadcast on Time Warner stations around the world. The whole vault apparatus was set up on the competition floor. The runway, the springboard, the vaulting horse, and the soft landing mats behind it. The mats were the only thing standing between a missed vault and a hard floor. On July 21st, 1998, during warm-ups for the vault event final, Sang ran down the runway to perform what gymnasts call a timer. A timer is a simple, half-finished vault. You sprint, you hit the springboard, you go up and over the horse, but you don't add the full twist. It is a way to feel the apparatus, find your distance, and warm up your body before the real attempt. Sang had done thousands of timers in her career. She had never been hurt doing one. Then, by her own account, given years later in a federal lawsuit, an employee of the Goodwill Games walked into the landing area while she was already in the air. He moved a mat. He moved it just as she was rotating over the top of the horse. She saw it out of the corner of her eye. She lost focus mid-flight. Her body, which had been trained for years to follow a precise rotation, did not finish the rotation. She over-rotated. She came down head first. Her chin was pinned hard against her chest at the moment her body hit the mat. The force of the impact fractured and dislocated her 6th and 7th cervical vertebrae. The damage to her spinal cord was instant, and it was catastrophic. She was paralyzed from the chest down at the second of impact. She was 17 years old. She would never walk again. She was rushed to a New York hospital. Her teammates, her coaches, and her family back in China did not know if she would survive the night. The president of the Goodwill Games, a man named Michael Plant, stood in front of cameras and made a public promise. Her medical care, he said, would be taken care of. The president of Turner Sports, Harvey Schiller, said publicly that they would do everything in their power to make sure her future was secure. The promises were made on television. 13 years passed. Those promises were not kept the way Sang says she was led to believe they would be. In 2011, Sang filed a $1.8 billion lawsuit in federal court in Manhattan. She sued Time Warner. She sued USA Gymnastics. She sued Ted Turner. She sued the insurance companies. She sued the Chinese-American couple who had been appointed as her legal guardians in the United States. Her complaint alleged that the Goodwill Games organizers had allowed too many people to be near the vault apparatus during a high-risk warm-up session, and that the supervision of the landing area had been inadequate. The case eventually settled. The insurance carriers agreed to cover her medical care for the rest of her life. A settlement reported to total around $10 million. No party admitted fault. Sang has not walked since July 21st, 1998. She has said in interviews that the hardest part was not the fall. The hardest part was being told for 13 years that the people who had promised to help her would help her, and watching them not. Kevin Dare was 19 years old. He was a sophomore at Penn State University. He grew up in State College, Pennsylvania, the kind of small Pennsylvania town where the local college was the center of everything. His father had been a pole vaulter. His older brother Eric was also at Penn State, where he played cornerback on the football team and threw the javelin. The whole family was built around track and field. The whole family was built around Kevin's career. The year before, in the spring of 2001, Kevin had won the USA Junior Championships in pole vault. He was the best junior pole vaulter in the entire country. His personal best was 16 feet 4 3/4 inches, a height that put him on the trajectory most coaches recognize as Olympic level. He was 19. He had years of growth ahead of him. On February 23, 2002, he was competing at the Big Ten Conference Indoor Championships at the University of Minnesota. The bar was set at 15 feet 7 inches. That was almost a full foot below his personal best. For Kevin Dare, this should have been a routine vault. The vault box is the part of the pole vault setup that almost nobody outside the sport ever notices. It is a metal trough sunk into the ground at the base of the two standards that hold the bar. It is where the pole plants, where the tip of the pole drops in and braces against the back wall of the box just before it bends and launches the vaulter into the air. The box is 8 inches deep. It is made of metal. There is padding on the runway leading into it, and there is padding on the soft landing pit behind it. But the box itself, the metal trough at the very moment of takeoff, is uncovered. If a vaulter falls backward into the box from any real height, the box is what they hit. Kevin's plant on that attempt was off. The exact reason has never been fully determined in public reporting, but witnesses interviewed by CNN and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette said his pole bent in a direction his body was not prepared for. Instead of being launched up and over the bar, he was thrown backward off the pole. He never came down on the landing pit at all. He fell headfirst into the metal vault box. The University of Minnesota's emergency medical team reached him within seconds. They began treating him on the runway. He was rushed to Hennepin County Medical Center. He was pronounced dead a short time later from fatal head trauma. He was 19 years old. The Big Ten Conference held an emergency meeting that night. The head coaches and athletes met to discuss whether to continue. The majority did not want to compete out of respect. On Sunday morning, the conference announced the rest of the championship had been canceled and would not be rescheduled. Kevin Dare was not the only pole vaulter who died in 2002. He was one of three. A high school senior named Jesus Casada died in Clewiston, Florida. A high school senior named Samoa Fili died in Wichita, Kansas. 3 pole vaulters dead in a single calendar year forced a national reckoning. After Kevin's death, the NCAA mandated padded vault box collars to cover the metal edges of the box. Helmet use was strongly encouraged at the youth level, though it was not made universally mandatory. Penn State University established the Kevin Dare Pole Vaulting Memorial Scholarship in his name. His brother Eric spoke to the Daily Pennsylvanian a few weeks after the funeral. He kept coming back to the same question. How was it possible that the piece of equipment every coach in the sport had been arguing about for years, the one piece of metal that could end a life on contact, still did not have a cover on it? On plenty of high school tracks across America in 2026, that question still does not have an answer. The boxes on those runways are still metal. The padding around them still does not cover the box itself. Nodar Kumaritashvili was 21 years old. He came from Bakuriani, a small mountain town in Georgia where the snow comes early and the slopes are steep. His grandfather had helped bring the sport of luge to Georgia in the first place. His father had sledded. His uncle had sledded. He started training when he was 13. He had qualified for the men's singles luge at the 2010 Vancouver Olympics. It was his first games. 11 months before the opening ceremony, the head of the International Luge Federation sent a letter to the Vancouver Organizing Committee. The Whistler Sliding Center track was too fast, the letter said. Athletes were hitting speeds close to 95 miles per hour. Someone could be badly hurt. The CEO of the organizing committee was a man named John Furlong. He read the letter. He forwarded it to his team with a private note. In his own words, he wrote that an athlete could be badly injured, or worse. He wrote that the case could be made, they had been warned, and did nothing. He told his lawyers to review it. That email was uncovered by the CBC after Kumaritashvili was dead. The Luge Federation had asked for changes to 6 dangerous curves on the Whistler track as far back as 2005. According to documents the CBC obtained through Canada's Access to Information Act, only 2 of the 6 requested changes were made. The lip on Curve 15, where Kumaritashvili first lost control on his fatal run, was lowered by 220 millimeters. The Federation had asked for 600 to 900 millimeters. The change that was made was less than half of what had been requested. On February 12, 2010, hours before the Olympics began, Kumaritashvili pushed off for what was supposed to be one of his final training runs. He came out of Curve 15 late. He hit Curve 16 at 89.2 miles per hour. It was his fastest speed of the entire training session. He had never gone that fast on this track before. He lost control. His sled went sideways. His body cleared the wall. He struck an unpadded steel support pole at full speed. The impact was not survivable. Medics reached him within seconds. CPR was started in under a minute. He was airlifted to the Whistler Healthcare Center, where he was pronounced dead. He was the first athlete to die at a Winter Olympics in 18 years. The official International Luge Federation report said the cause was driver error and inexperience. The British Columbia coroner's report acknowledged that opinions on whether the track itself was safe were, in the report's exact words, deeply divided. After his death, the wall at Curve 16 was raised. The steel poles were padded. The men's start position was lowered to the women's start to slow sleds down. The Sochi 2014 track was designed with 2 uphill sections specifically to keep this from ever happening again. Every one of those changes had been requested before Nodar Kumaritashvili ever set foot on Canadian ice. None of them happened until after he was dead. Sarah Burke was 29 years old. She was the reason superpipe skiing was at the 2014 Olympics. She lobbied the IOC personally. She wrote letters. She took meetings. She convinced the most conservative sporting body on earth to add her sport to the Winter Games. She would have been the gold medal favorite in Sochi. On January 10th, 2012, she was training in the Eagle Superpipe at Park City Mountain Resort in Utah, the same superpipe where, 2 years earlier, Olympic snowboarder Kevin Pierce had nearly died from a brain injury during training. The walls of the Eagle Superpipe stood 22 feet tall. They had been raised from 18 feet over the years as the tricks got harder. There were no consistent international safety standards for superpipe wall height, snow conditions, or required medical staffing during private training sessions. Burke was attempting a flat spin 540, a trick well within her ability. Her landing was off. She fell at the bottom of the pipe and struck the hard, packed snow at the base. The impact ruptured her vertebral artery, one of the 4 major arteries supplying blood to the brain. She went into cardiac arrest at the scene. CPR was performed, but she had already gone too long without oxygen. She was airlifted to the University of Utah Hospital. She remained on life support for 9 days. She died on January 19th, 2012. Park City Mountain Resort was a private facility. The training session was a personal sponsor event. There was no governing body responsible for the pipe's safety geometry, the snow conditions, or the medical response standards. 2 years later, her ashes were spread in the halfpipe at the Sochi Olympics, the very event she had fought to create. Her former coach, Trennan Painter, did it himself. The walls in international competition still stand at 22 feet today. Ross Milne was 19 years old, an Australian alpine skier training for his first Olympics. The 1964 Innsbruck Winter Games were 9 days away. He was on the Pachakoval course, the actual Olympic downhill course, practicing with the rest of the field. The course had no continuous safety netting along its perimeter. The trees lining the run had no padding. The barrier net systems used today, called A nets and B nets, would not be developed for years. On a high-speed section, Milne lost control. He went off the racing line. He slid into the trees. He hit one of them at racing speed. The impact killed him on the spot. He was the first athlete to die at a Winter Olympic Games. There was no formal investigation by modern standards. There was no inquiry into whether the course should have been netted. The games went on as scheduled. 8 days later, Olympic competitors raced down the same course where he had died. What followed Milne's death, slowly and over many decades, was the entire modern world of ski safety, the A-net and B-net systems. Mandatory tree padding on every World Cup and Olympic course. Course inspection led by athlete representatives. Mandatory crash helmets, restricted access zones, the FIS race director system that can delay or cancel events on safety grounds. None of those things existed in 1964. Every single one was built because skiers kept dying. Milne first, then more after him, until the federations finally accepted that the courses themselves were the problem. He was 19. He never got to race in the Olympics. The course that killed him was raced on in Olympic competition 8 days later, while his body was still being prepared to be sent home to Australia. The 7 athletes you just heard about, Mukhina, Gomez, Sanglan, Dare, Kumaritashvili, Burke, and Milne, all trusted the same thing. They trusted that someone had checked. They trusted that the apparatus, the venue, the federation had done their jobs. Every one of them was wrong. The apparatus does not know your name. It does not know how long you trained or how much your country sacrificed to send you, or that you personally lobbied the IOC to put your sport on the Olympic program. It only knows physics, and physics does not make exceptions for any of them.